My name is Marguerite Herman, and I'm here for the Cheyenne League of Women Voters, and this is the second forum we've had for legislative races. Last week we had House Districts 10, 12, and 44, and then tonight we have Senate District 5. Earlier this evening we had House District 7. So those are all the contested races in Laramie County, and both the House race earlier and in this, there are only Republicans running, so the primary is the election, and we urge everybody to learn about these candidates and to get out there and vote. Let's see, just to let you know also, all these forums that we're taping and conducting will be recorded, will be put up on YouTube online, and they will be with Charter Communications doing the recording tonight. They will also go on their public access channel 192. To let you know that the forum from last week, the House Districts 10, 12, and 44, will be on the public access channel 192. They'll be on 3 times. On Wednesday and Friday of this week, that's July 18th and 20th at 6 p.m., and also Saturday at 11 a.m. They have already gone up on the YouTube channel for the Cheyenne League of Women Voters. And going forward, July 31st, here also in the City Council chambers will be the City Council candidates. And I think most of them are going to show up, so you'll be able to get a good look at all of them, all 3 wards. And then in August, during the county fair at the Frontier Park, we will have, on August 6th, we will have all the county races, and then on August 9th, we'll have the 2 state races that seem to not be getting the headlines too much, but we wanted to help voters find out about the candidates for state treasurer and state auditor. And really the purpose of these forums is to help the candidates just explain their positions to the public, to the voters. Voters are a chance to do a side-by-side comparison. But we urge people who have follow-up questions to get in touch with these candidates, visit their Facebook pages, their websites, whatever they have out there. Early voting has started, so you know, if you've already voted, great, but if you're still gathering information, we urge you to really look at all the sources that are out there. I think that the newspaper has interviewed several candidates, not the legislative. There's those online, there are voters' guides, and really the whole point of the electoral process to be informed and to vote. Let's see, and just as a word about the League of Women Voters, those you don't know, we are a nonpartisan organization. We're open to everybody, and we work to help people get involved in their government to be informed and vote. And we hope these forums help provide that information. We do not support candidates. We do not support parties. So this is about helping the public get the information they need. And to that end, the State League has produced a brochure called Choosing a Candidate, and it just gives guidelines on how to evaluate candidates and campaigns. And we've also written up, composed 5 principles for campaign integrity. Again, just guidelines by which voters can evaluate candidates and their campaigns. And so tonight we have the race for Senate District 5. It's a 4-year term, and there is no term limit. We have Fred Emmerich, who is the incumbent, and the 2 challengers, Lynn Hutchings and Ryan Wright. And what we'll do tonight, what we've been doing out throughout the forum, is they will have 2 minutes to open, introduce themselves. They will have 2 minutes as a closing to sum up or touch on topics that have not been raised. And then during the evening, the League has written several questions that will take a minute and a half. I'll give them a minute and a half to answer, and then with an optional 30 seconds to, after everyone's answer, to add to their own answers to respond to other candidates. And we have Chris doing the timing over there, and she'll let you know when count down with the time cards, and then when time finally expires, the timer will be in a very insistent fashion. We do have the opportunity. We have very many questions ourselves, but we have someone here who can, if you want to add a question, maybe something occurs to you now or you came with a question, this card with pencils, and bring it up to me, and we'll get to them as we can, depending on the time available. We allow about 45 minutes for the forum. So we'll go ahead and get started at this point. And we'll start with the 2-minute openings, and we will alternate the starting on this. We'll start with Senator Emmerich. You have 2 minutes to explain to us why you're running. Introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Marguerite. Good evening. I'm Fred Emmerich. I'm the incumbent in Senate District 5, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. I'm running for office to make sure the views of Senate District 5 constituents are addressed in legislative decisions. The voters of District 5 deserve a senator who is accessible, responsive, and interested in their concerns. I truly love the work I do, and over the past 8 years I've acquired knowledge and expertise to be effective in the Senate. I now chair Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife Committee in the Senate, serve on agriculture and several select committees, and I'm honored to be selected for these responsibilities. Representing the approximately 19,000 citizens of District 5 is a responsibility I don't take lightly. District 5 includes large ranches, smaller ranchettes, and probably a fifth of the population of Cheyenne. The needs are different, attitudes vary, but I respectfully consider all of them. I believe in a thoughtful and realistic review of the issues. I invest in the community, and I'm vested in the community. I've lived and worked in Laramie County my entire life, and I volunteer, I participate in different activities, serve on boards of different organizations. As an active community leader, I take every opportunity throughout the year to interact with people, to praise current issues. I consider current legislation from multiple points of view. Through my experience as county commissioner, business owner, and a senator, I know and understand legislative impacts. I have the background and experience to represent District 5 and address the challenges of Wyoming. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lynn Hutchings, one of the two other Democratic challengers, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oops.
Oops, I'm sorry. Can we edit that out? I'm sorry. I apologize. The two Republican challengers to the incumbent, Lynn Hutchings. Do you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Marguerite, and I don't mind the slip up because it helps me see that you're nervous too. I'm Lynn Hutchings. I'm retired military disabled veteran. I served as a system analyst, database manager, and Lean Six Sigma project manager. I've also served my community as a firefighter, an EMT, and a state representative. And after I served in the House, I found several people in Senate District 5 asking me to run for Senate. They liked the way I represented them in House District 42. They say they want a senator that shares in their values such as a transparent government, a senator who will have disciplined spending, will resist tax and fee increases, no state income tax, and someone who supports our Second Amendment rights, and most importantly, someone who will respect the dignity of human life. I fit into all those categories, so that is part of the reason why I'm running for Senate District 5. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And Ryan White, 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Ryan. I'm running for State Senate 5. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Sheridan. I went to public school there until about the 7th grade. After that, I went homeschooling for a couple of years. I attended Sheridan College when I was 14, graduated with honors at 17 with my associates, and then I went into the insurance business, my family's business. I bought a house, settled down. Also, I joined the speech and debate team for Sheridan College, traveled around the U.S. and won some national awards. Then I got a scholarship to attend NAU at Northern Arizona University. I got my bachelor's there in '03. Returned to Sheridan. I was elected to the Community College Board of Trustees in 2004, and then I also took the LSAT about the same time. I got into Georgetown, and I sold everything to finance my law career and my law school. And I moved out east. I attended law school at night at Georgetown, and I worked full-time on the U.S. Senate Help Committee under Senator Enzi. I graduated there in 2008, and then I moved to New York to practice commercial and corporate litigation in New York. I met my wife in New York in 2012 at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on 42nd Street, just bumped into her, and that worked out pretty well. And then also I got a job around 2012 in Johnson County as a deputy county attorney, and I moved back to Wyoming. I started prosecuting at that point, and then about 3.5 years ago, I got a job at the district attorney's office down here, prosecuting felonies, and I moved down here, and ever since I've been doing complex felonies and felony drug-related crimes. I'm running because I'm concerned. I'm concerned for my children's future, for Cheyenne's future, for the state of Wyoming's future. I'm concerned about our revenue, the boom and bust cycle, and the lack of long-term stability and planning. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now we'll get into the questions, and as we did with all the other previous forms, we'll start out with 1.5 minutes to address a question that was put to you actually in our invitation. 1.5 minutes to talk about 3 issues facing the state and very quickly how you might address them, and then you will have another 30 seconds after that, optional if you want to add 2 after everyone's done. So we'll start with Ms. Hutchings, 1.5 minutes on the 3 issues.
All right. The top 3, as I see them, as I knock on doors throughout the district, are the budget deficit and state spending, no state income tax, federal lands transfer. Those are the 3 big ones that I've been hearing as I knock on the doors. I, like Ryan, believe that the legislature, as he mentioned, should plan for those boom and bust cycles. That we should not start projects during our boom cycles, projects and programs that we cannot sustain during the bust cycles. And we should never threaten to cut education funding for those unsustainable programs. Number 2, no state income tax. Number 3, knowing the pros and cons now on the state lands issues and how crucial that is to some people here in our community and how they've brought it up in that they're not for the lands transfer. That has heightened my awareness of it, and just researching the transfer of the lands and seeing that their concerns are so great that if there was ever any legislation brought up for the transfer of our federal lands, that I would read thoroughly that piece of legislation and make the, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Wright, the 3 issues, you have 1.5 minutes.
Talking to voters in District 5, the same issues, a little bit different. One is the transparency in government. I hear that over and over from people. They're very frustrated with the fact that they feel that a lot of the government is basically done behind closed doors. So I support increasing it through recording executive sessions, also having a searchable website that we can actually find where the expenditures are going from and where they're going to. I know that I believe we were graded an F recently in this. And also having all contracts put out for open bids. That's very important, and that's not exactly happening currently. One of the other issues is, what Lynn said, is the budget. The fact that our revenue is so sporadic. We've been hearing about this for decades, the boom and bust cycle. But it really gets to the point where you can't talk about long-term planning because you can't really even talk about the revenue. And if you don't even know what it's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years, it's really hard to plan for the next 10 to 20. And then finally, just the budget cuts. I've seen a lot of budget cuts in treatment and substance abuse and mental evaluations and just trying to get ASIs in jails. And we all know about that as far as like just this week, the newspaper ran an article about how our jail is near capacity. And this is a direct example of budget cuts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Senator Emmerich, minute and a
Thank you.
half on 3 issues.
Budget is the foremost issue in my mind right now. Payments for mineral extraction to the state treasury have dropped dramatically, resulting in a structural deficit of about $900 million. The LSRA will only last a few more years. So budget planning needs to retain funding for statutory requirements and address employee retention, strategic reductions, efficiency, and enhanced revenue. The second issue is education funding. The requirement that education opportunities be equitable across the state, the distance between communities, and the small population create unique features. Maintaining adequate funding for educators, modern classrooms, and labs is needed to prepare students for their future, not our past. My approach is for conservative, disciplined budgeting to address those needs. And the third is jobs and the economy. From December 14 to December 7, 2017, the number of people that were employed in Wyoming dropped by about 33,000 people, or 13,000, excuse me. To offset that loss, expansion of existing businesses and recruitment of new businesses is needed. Wyoming is ranked as the #1 business-friendly state. But a
Okay.
friendly tax climate.
You can finish your statement if you, we don't mean to step on your toes.
Thank you. But a friendly tax climate is not enough to retain and entice business growth. We need 21st century skills, high-speed broadband, and reliable air service.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to take the optional 30 seconds to amplify or respond?
Just briefly, Marguerite, I believe our budget deficit was 1.9 billion this year.
The structural deficit is 900 million.
Thank you, sir.
I'm
Okay.
good.
And so my next question actually is, all 3 of you have mentioned, directly or indirectly, the reliance of our revenue on the energy industry, which is boom, bust, up, down, somewhat unpredictable. It's fantastic when the going is good, and then not so much in the past few years. So if you could address, and we will start this time with you, Mr. Wright, what is the role of the state and legislature and the governor, but the state, to diversify the economy and subsidize businesses to come in, and the air industry and whatever, and if you could just sort of address what is the role of the state in that whole diversification and supporting businesses.
Well, I worry about picking winners or losers, and also when sometimes we subsidize certain industries coming in, where I'm not completely opposed to it, sometimes we're actually basically going against the businesses that are already here because we're giving somebody perhaps even an unfair advantage. But if it's a completely different industry that's here that actually adds some revenue to the state, I think that we definitely should take a look at it. One of the things that we've talked about as far as diversification, and there's been a lot of articles on this, is the fact that we get our money from minerals, and if we start bringing in other jobs that technically don't contribute to the bottom line, we're in a world of hurt. So if you're going to talk about economic diversification, you also have to talk about tax reform and where we're getting our revenue.
Okay, thank you. Cycling around, Mr. Emmerich, with the role of the state and state government in diversifying and subsidizing some businesses.
Marguerite, that's an interesting question, because I have voted for some of the state-sponsored subsidies, if you will, or loans, and others I have not. And I think it relates to competition to existing businesses, and whether those businesses have gone out and tried to actively seek bank loans, things of that sort. We also have to consider what they're going to bring to the state as far as jobs, revenue, and things of that sort. Diversification is fine, but people need to realize that the mineral extraction money came directly to the state, and we need to replace that stream. We can try it through diversification. It'll just take longer.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hutchings?
Interesting question. There were a lot of textures to that question. You asked about the airlines. You asked about diversifying the economy and the mineral industry. So it's kind of going to be a hard question to really pinpoint, but I will say that I am for free market systems. I believe people know how to invest their own money best. I'm not for subsidizing any business that comes to the state. If you want to start up a business, you should be able to have the capital or investment funds somehow, some way, without the state offering that, because the state is the taxpayer paying for your startup cost. Our role as a legislature should be very minimal. Our role should be creating a fair and business-friendly environment, and that only. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone want to take another 30 seconds to respond or expand?
I'll just mention it briefly. As far as air travel, you asked a little bit of the question, and Lynn talked about this a bit. One of the things that does concern me is the fact that a lot of communities do it alone, and they go alone. Gillette, Sheridan, and right now we all see it in the paper with Cheyenne. But the problem is that you still need some type of coordinated effort on a state level, so we don't have some towns having air service and other towns having absolutely nothing. This would also be good for the bottom line because it increases tourism.
Okay.
I kind of disagree with my opponent here on whether a community has airline service or not. That is up to that community to provide, or an airline to provide that service. If Gillette has the service and Cheyenne doesn't, that's going to be between the business and the community, not subsidizing it.
Okay. Very good. Ready to move on, and we'll start now, with Mr. Emmerich. We'll start the process. So, continuing a little bit on the economic angle, medical marijuana. Various leagues around the state, members of the League of Women Voters, have taken position supporting medical marijuana, and I guess. Where do you stand on that as far as Wyoming doing the same thing, allowing marijuana to be sold as prescribed by a medical person, and in short of that, and maybe in addition to that, maybe making it a very low priority enforcement. People who have possession of marijuana, make it a very low priority for law enforcement to go after people. So I guess if you can just sort of talk about medical marijuana, where you stand on that for the state of Wyoming.
Well, marijuana itself is a catch-22 situation. Legal in the state south of us, illegal in this state, and illegal federally. But research is now beginning to surface where certain factors within marijuana and hemp have now produced an FDA-accepted treatment for child seizures, and it has no THC in it. This had to be researched in, of all places, England. But FDA has now approved the use of CBD, I think, CBG, I forget one of the factors. But it's approved, and I think medical marijuana has great future. I really do. Recreational, no, but medical, I would agree with it, and it needs more research.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hutchings.
This may be one time where I agree with my senator. I am for serious research, and with medical marijuana, I know with any other drug, we want there to be, forgive me, my brain kind of lost it here, serious research done and critical, my words, help me here. Pardon? We can say that, but I know there's something else in mind, and hopefully it'll come out with the medical marijuana. But I do want to see if my opponent to my left, Ryan, can verify this, that marijuana in the states around us hasn't been made legal, but it's just been decriminalized. So again, I'm for medical marijuana.
And that's normally the first step of my understanding. I prosecuted felony drugs for 3 years. A third of my cases were marijuana, and most of them were large loads coming through the state. We're not talking about an ounce or two here. It's a 3 ounces for a felony, and I was normally prosecuting 10, 20, 100, 350 pounds at a time, and it's really just tax evasion at that point. I am fine with medical marijuana. I think that it actually should be put on the ballot. I think people need to make a decision whether they want it here or not. I don't think it should be up to the legislatures to decide, because it's going to affect everybody in a very personal way and not all positive. But it also gets to the point to where you can also sometimes increase revenue through it. And states have been showing to do this. Obviously, it increases a lot of law enforcement and a lot of ODs and trips to the ER, and there's a lot of other things that come with it. But it does decrease time prosecutors and law enforcement spend on it. When you're talking a third of your caseload is marijuana on a felony level, when you get away from that, you can have a lot more time to prosecute methamphetamine, heroin, and a lot of the other drugs that are extremely serious. And that's not to say the marijuana is not serious. It's just probably not as serious, most people will agree, as like heroin or meth or the opioid epidemic.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to add another 30 seconds?
You know, I'm still trying to figure out that word.
Oh,
But the side effects, I really want serious research to be done with that.
Efficacy.
Regulation. Thank you. Appreciate that, sir. Serious regulations on the medical marijuana. Thank you so much. And I want to look into the side effects. And as for reducing penalties for the small amounts, I'm going to be a no on reducing penalties.
Okay, very good.